probably know his distinguished background. But more importantly, he is the chief editor of 2 biomedical journals. So he's very, putting it very lightly, familiar with the do's and don'ts of publishing and so on. And so Dr. Afioga was an entrepreneur in Fiji before she took up her current position here with us at the NUS. She was the deputy head of the School of Management and Public Administration, the University of the South Pacific in Fiji as well. She has also worked at the James Cook University at the Singapore campus. She has been the reviewer and editor of journals as well, and served various committees in her capacity at USP. Dr. Naz has also worked on international research projects. She has been in the teaching fraternity in the higher education sector for more than 13 years. We would like to extend a very warm welcome to you both. Thank you for making time to guide us on this journey. Let's give them a warm hand.
So one of the key things that is expected is that at the end of this workshop, participants should have an increased understanding or an enhanced understanding on the do's of publishing, factors that they need to pay attention to enhance the research publication process, as well as the don'ts of publishing, the things that they need to avoid. The other important takeaway for this workshop should be the participants themselves, many of which are renowned professors, senior academics, and have also had ups and downs in their publishing journey, to be able to share with all of us some of their fears and challenges and the strategies or tools that they may have used to have this enhanced learning process or have an enjoyable research journey. How did they navigate this process? The other aspect that this workshop seeks to touch upon is to develop an enhanced understanding of the strategies to publicize research. The last part of the workshop will basically touch upon open access publishing, what are some of the outlets that we all as researchers can explore, as well as how to handle reviewers' comments. This is the tough battle that we all face. And in the end, to be able to bridge the gap between policy and practice through research. So I start off by saying that some of us have had different journeys. Some of us have had a really enjoyable experience. We've been able to climb our ladder of success. Yes, we've been bogged down with books and laptops and e-resources and so forth, but at the end of it all, we've published. And that's only because the ladder of success was a smooth ride, because we would have had access to a lot of resources, we would have met mentors that guided us, that coached us, and we would have had lovely colleagues to fall back on that build us in terms of knowledge sharing practices. So some of us have a very enjoyable ride. What happens to the next set of people that we have in the academia? So there's this logic, the evolution of academia, that talks so much about publish or perish. If you don't publish, you perish. So what happens? Most of us academics, we really want to be in a very good mood. But what happens? We don't get food poisoning, rather we have mood poisoning, right? We want to smile, we want to be so active and engaged in the research process. But because of this very logic, publish or perish, we don't experience the same process. There's also situations where you see that there's a toxic culture because of the fears of the unknown in the publishing process, or because you do not get the support that is required. So what happens? Yes, we end up in depression. Or if you ask a simple question, what is this thing in academia called about publish or perish? Then people might tell you that this means that do your job or get fired or get demoted, in other words. But what if we have a good journey or an environment that is conducive, that explores the very processes in terms of the do's and don'ts of publishing, or we have colleagues that are helpful to each other, that are guiding each other, that we can fall back on. From there, yes, our journey will be one where we will feel accomplished. So in this rapidly changing world, what do we see? We see there's so much talk about high impact journals. And we are bogged down. What does this high impact journal mean? It's basically about the number of citations of the journal, of the articles, and the ranking of the journal. There are many universities that have stressed on the academia that we want you to publish in top ranked journals. And the moment this thing comes out, A*A, it's mind-boggling because you really don't understand the ranking processes. And a lot of focus by various universities on journal citation reports. So again, we are pressured to publish. So today, in this workshop, what I share with you, I do not share with you from the perspective of know-it-all. No. What I share with you today is my life based on my perspective. These are my lived experiences. As a researcher, I took small steps in my publication journey. As an editor, what did I find when I was reading manuscripts or when I was reviewing book chapters or books? And as a reviewer, what did I find? And based on those experiences, this workshop is prepared to share with you my perspective. So we start off on the do's and don'ts of publishing. Why do papers get rejected? First and foremost, all or each and every one of us needs to select a journal where we are going to send our work to. So how do we go about selecting journals? It has to be peer reviewed, and the pressure is for the journal to be a ranked journal. So sometimes at the university, we have research officers or managers that give us a list of journals. In social sciences, let's say, in education, in medicine, in sciences, in the business fraternity, etc., etc. And those list of journals actually contain the ranking and the ISBN numbers as well as electronic links that researchers can refer to. But if you do not have such a facility at your university, would you be saying that you can't select a journal? The answer is no, because you do have experienced colleagues. You do have renowned professors, associate professors, and senior colleagues that you could always fall back on. They are your key resources, and they can help you select the journal. They can help you identify what journals are good for publishing. Right? So you always have a mentor, somebody that you can fall back on. Another important aspect here, and what I find is that once the journal is selected, and many people, when they submit their work to the journals, it must fit the scope, the aims, as well as the submission criteria requirements. And if your work is not fitting in or tying in to the scope, the aims and objectives of the journal, that is a likely reason for the manuscript to be rejected. Another important point that I find is that I read some articles where the scope is not aligned. The scope of the paper itself is not tying in to the key objectives of the journal. So it may be a purely theoretical journal, but you end up sending an empirical paper to that journal. It does not tie in. Or the topics would be educational, but again, you try to push your way in by sending a paper that does not fit in within the aims or the key topics that have been highlighted in a special issue, for instance. So some of the common mistakes that we may make because of which papers get rejected. Now, following the author guidelines, I've noticed this heaps of times. Authors think they can ignore the author guidelines, not worry about the formatting, not worry about the spelling errors, not worry about the length of the article, and just flag the paper to the editor for desk review. It's a direct no-no. The onus is not on the reviewer or the editor to format your paper and align it as per the instructions. Onus is always on us as the author of our papers to ensure that simple things like instruction for authors or author guidelines are adhered to. The other common thing is the title of your paper. So sometimes we may read a paper that is so generic, but the content of the paper is a different matter altogether, and the title does not capture what the author is trying to sell. If you're trying to sell your manuscript, then your title has to be catchy enough, and it must align to what you are actually presenting in your article or in your submission. And many a times, a catchy title is what captures the attention of editors as well, and it makes them want to read. Sometimes a boring title makes them put it on the shelf for a while and then reflect on it. So you always want to have a title that is catchy enough and well aligned to the content of what you are publishing on. It's the same thing for an abstract. What should an abstract look like? Abstracts need to be short, simple, informative. Something that we can digest or the reader can digest very easily. The purpose of your manuscript, the scope of your work, the theories that you are using, the key findings, as well as the methods coupled with the implications need to be clearly spelled out in 150 to 200 words, let's say. That's a big task to keep it short and crispy and to the point. And habitually, for many editors, this is something that they really read, and this is what would be a deciding factor if they read your work further or not. So always ensure that the abstract captures the main elements of your paper. There are many abstracts that goes to editors. The purpose is there, but the method is not there. The findings is there, but the implications is not there. So you really don't know what's happening in the paper. So tap into the key elements which need to be part of the abstract. So a poorly written abstract is a definite reason for rejection. It's the deciding factor, the title and the abstract. And it has to come out clearly in terms of the implication. Is it a theoretical implication, a managerial one, a societal one, etc., etc. Now, keywords. Some papers clearly state 6 or 8 keywords. And then we see a paper with 15 keywords. It's a no-no. Because keywords need to be selected very, very carefully. And the keywords actually capture the essence of what your paper is all about. Another common problem, how we write our papers. Because a badly written paper is something that is not worth a desk review, not worth the editor's time and effort. I know that for many of us, English is not our first language. And I am not being prejudiced by saying that we have poor English. I am not implying that in any way, but rather that if English is not our first language and if we are writing something, it really needs to be proofread carefully. So there's a lot of hard work and labor that goes into the copy editing process. If you cannot do it yourself, always seek help from a professional that can help you edit your work, so that the professional standard as per the manuscript guidelines is maintained. That's why we say that poor English is a common reason why papers are rejected. Polishing is a must, which ensures accuracy and fluency of the paper. And it's very important to also study the writing style of the journal. Different journals have different writing styles. An empirical journal or a science-based technical journal will have a different writing style altogether versus a social science journal, versus an education journal that is more on policy and practice. What we need to pay attention to is always download a sample copy of the paper from the journal that you are targeting. Read that carefully. How the title is written, how the abstract is drafted, how they've written the introduction and various other aspects of that particular paper. That's a good starting point to learn about the writing style that is expected of authors. And that would be very helpful as you draft your paper if that's the journal that you are intending to target. Another common reason is lack of context. Because many of us fail to clearly state how our research fits into the larger picture of the scholarly discourse. How are we really making a significant contribution to the literature? And what gap is our research trying to fill in? Nobody wants to read boring research. Every person, every editor, reviewer wants to know what new knowledge you are adding to the literature. What gap are you investigating? So you must be able to sell your paper, must be able to convince to the editor or the reviewer that there is a gap that you are filling in, and come out very, very concisely and clearly on that point. The other part, of course, is the structure. How do you structure your manuscript? Which starts off with the introduction and the lit review, followed by the methodology and the findings or the results section, onto the conclusion, then in the end with the references or acknowledgement section. What to look for in the structure? As an editor and reviewer, what I look for is how are you writing the introduction? For me, an introduction is like an upside down pyramid. I really won't be interested in reading Walk on Fiji, let's say, if somebody does not tell me or introduce me to their topic and just starts talking about Fiji. I'm not interested. I would be interested in knowing what the topic is about, so introduce your topic. I would be interested in knowing, based on the topic, what global studies have been done. I would be interested in knowing if there's any specific literature on that particular topic. And then, yes, finally, I'll be interested to see how you narrow it down to your topic in Fiji to explain what the purpose or the aims of your work is. So it works like an upside down pyramid. But it has to be crispy enough for the reader to buy in. And it has to be clear as well. So the writing style is very important because writing is an art. The second aspect of the structure is the literature review. A good literature review does wonders to your work and to your manuscript. It can uplift the quality of your work but there are different types of papers that are written. Some may be theoretical, some may be empirical, while others may be a mixed paper. Therefore, you use the literature review to showcase to the reader how your paper fits in to the larger void in the literature. What gaps you fill in, what theories you are using to support your work, coupled with important aspects like what research has been done to identify the key research areas that you come up with or the key research questions, what research is done in terms of the hypothesis that you have developed. How did you come up with a particular hypothesis? If you are saying that customer satisfaction and service quality are dependent on each other, did you come up with that just while sleeping on the bed and that's what you decided to put in your paper? Or is it something really that you read about which is substantiated in the work of other people through research? So those form of connections is what needs to be reflected in a literature review. While some researchers use inductive reasoning or inductive based papers, whereby they study the theories, they study the literature review, and they come up with their own conceptual models or frameworks which they intend to test through data collection and testing processes. So, should we say that a long literature review is a good review? No, that's not appreciated by editors and reviewers. Does this also mean that you should neglect the important contributions from the literature? Answer is again no, because you do not want to write a literature review which just talks about the single or standalone work of like 100 researchers. It's too long. So how do you write a literature review? To write a good literature review, there would be so many researchers that would have talked about stress, let's say. 10 more that would have talked about the stress consequences, let's say. And a 14 or 15 more that would be talking about the factors that impact the stress level of workers at universities, let's say. So are you going to like include each and every author and then you're going to build your paragraphs and keep writing about it? What you need to do is look at the key themes, similarities and subject areas. Club those themes as clusters, and then you group the authors that are talking about similar themes, and then you use that in your quotation within the parenthesis of the work that you are intending to write on. So if I have a group of researchers that talk about stress, yes, that would be in one paragraph and maybe 5 references. If I have 10 people that I want to quote that are talking about the factors that cause stress, I would have that in my next paragraph, let's say. And then the following paragraph can talk about the stress consequences if I've read 14 more articles with a similar theme, let's say. That's very important. Clustering similar subjects or themes together. Another important part of having a good literature review is to discuss the key results from the papers which is relevant to your work, and always to use material from the journal that you are intending to publish in. So if I'm intending to target the International Journal of Public Administration, I need to review the papers in that journal, study the writing style, and quote articles within my work from that particular journal as well. The most cited, most relevant articles. And if I am publishing this year, and if somebody is reading my work, my literature review should not be 2010 and like 80s and 90s. No, that cannot happen. And the editor or the reviewer would definitely send your work back. It's outdated. Nobody wants to read outdated work. So the literature review has to be updated and at par with the topic that you are researching on. Literature reviews need to stress what is known and what is unknown. Because only when you identify what is known in the literature versus what is unknown in the literature can you say that yes, these are the gaps that I as a researcher am trying to fill in now. That's the new part of your research or the novelty of your research paper. And that is how you can say that your study will now add value to the literature. Another part of the structure is the methodology. So, when we read papers, a common reason for failure is a badly written methodology. No clear explanation on the ethics, on the methods or the instruments that are used in the research, and poor statistical analysis. So, if you are using a survey as a research method and the instrument that you are introducing is a questionnaire, and if you have 5-point Likert scales with closed questions, what you need to tell the reviewer or the editor is, how did you come up with that questionnaire? Why do you have certain number of questions in your questionnaire? Why have you decided to use closed questions in your questionnaire? Why survey is the best or the most appropriate tool to be used, let's say, or method to be used? What is your sampling? Okay, so you are sampling human participants. What are the ethical considerations involved? What sampling technique are you using? If you just tell them, I am doing a strata and full stop on that, definitely they want to know, so how did you identify the strata? How did you come up with these areas? Why did you select these areas? If you are sampling human participants and you are studying 3 countries, Fiji, Samoa, PNG, then definitely you need ethics approvals for all 3. Maybe one of the key challenges that as a researcher you will face is translating the questionnaire and transcribing back. So these are some of the intricate details which need to be stipulated in your manuscript. So the connection that you have between the methods and the instruments as well as with the sampling has to come out very clearly. Together with enlightening the reader or the editor and reviewer about the limitations of your research, because every research has limitations. So be very careful to list that out. The next part of structure is the findings section or the results section. And here we see that many authors, many researchers, they use charts and other forms of representations to present their work. I've read papers where it says, yes, the p-value is less than 0.05 and it's highly significant. Okay, good enough. It's highly significant for a technical person to understand what the statistical result mean. But what about the readership that you have? Does everybody understand what that p-value means? And if it's less than 0.05 on service quality, what that implies? The answer is no. So how do you present your results? Results should be presented in a way that it is understandable to the audience. You may be presenting technical aspects, but always include a narration on what that implies. How is it similar or dissimilar to the literature review that you have reviewed so far? And why is a particular result coming across? If it's a positive or a negative, or if something is high or low example. So if service quality is really good in one sector versus another case study that you've presented in your work and it's very poor, as a researcher, you must be able to explain those results. The other aspect is the conclusion. The conclusion brings closure to your work. So, the purpose of the conclusion is to highlight to the reader what are the key takeaways from your work. It has to be chronologically stated And it's very important that you clearly stipulate what are the limits of your research and the areas in which future research areas could be explored. If you've done a case study, you need to highlight the limitations of a case study research. If you've done a study on one country only with a small sample size, you must be able to say what are the other areas that needs to be explored or how your research can be further expanded. If it's a particular study that has been done in one point in time, you also need to say if there is a probability of having longitudinal studies over a period of time, let's say. If I want to study, let's say, right, how the students are performing in the different disciplines at the National University of Samoa, and if I study just 1 year's data, is that enough for me to base all my conclusive arguments and judgments on? It's not possible. If I want to state the limitation of my research, then definitely that is a limitation because it's just looking at 1 year's time frame. But if I do future research or want to comment on future research, then the possibility is expand the study and see the variation over a particular time frame, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years, and see the difference when Moodle was there, when Moodle is not there. What's the difference in the performance of the students, let's say? That would be a good argument as part of a way forward for future research. And of course, the implications. What are the key things that your research is pointing towards? Is it policy related? Is it to do with managerial implications or has societal implications? And the last bit, obviously, in the structure has to do with referencing, ethics, and acknowledgement. Every journal, every book with a particular publisher or a book chapter has a standard referencing style. Do not forget that, do not overlook that. It may be APA, Chicago, whatever it is. Adhere to the writing standards or the referencing standards. Ethics is also very important. Declare the ethical considerations that have been taken on board as part of your research process. Avoid plagiarism and avoid this habit of submitting your manuscript to more than one journal and thinking, I might be lucky and it might be accepted. Because you sign a disclaimer with the journal to say that your work is submitted only to that journal for that particular purpose and will not be submitted elsewhere. So you need to avoid this as well. So now I'll give you quick 10 minutes. And what I want you to do is, based on what you've heard, based on your experiences as a new researcher, as an intermediate or advanced researcher, we have some very well-known people present here in the workshop today that have so much that could be exchanged through this learning journey. I would like you to reflect on what your fears and challenges are and how do you intend to enhance your research journey. So we have some markers here for you and papers. We'll give you 10 minutes and then we will select some groups to share their experiences.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's more like and therefore it causes you to like
And I know who to talk to and who not
So I would not much say, but happy to discuss.
So our first fear here is positioning. So you know what we mean by positioning?
No, explain.
No? Okay, so when we talk about positioning, we're talking about the fact that we want to submit to a particular journal, but we don't quite know how to pitch the areas of our specialization. So the other fear as well is rejection. We don't like getting rejected for our poor English and our poor grammar. So one way to go forward in terms of positioning is that I shared with them how I had to learn by reading what other people wrote for particular journals, so that I saw how they wrote the abstract and the keywords that they were using. So I self-taught myself to look at the structure of things. So yes, learn to position yourself in a smart way so that you could get your journals in the right place. The challenge is where, how. We're talking about where to start, how to start, and who to go to. So sometimes we have a lot of great ideas, but we want to find someone that you can trust, that you can, in the words that we use, expose yourself to, expose your weaknesses, and be able to feel confident that they're there to support you. So what we thought would be a good way, which is something that some of us did, is we found a mentor, and we gave them our work, and they gave us a lot of red lines and scribbles, but we learned the hard way by giving your work for someone to critique and learning how to improve from the critiques.
And the last bit is how deep, one of the challenges is how deep and how wide can we go. So when you're trying to sort out what you're going to write about is how deep do you actually want to write about your work. And the ESL problem, as Aiono was saying, I just want to add a little bit more, is that sometimes we fear and we don't want to share with people because we are scared that they might laugh at us. But I always take it back to them when I was in New Zealand. I always say to them, challenge me in my mother tongue, my Samoan language. I'll talk to you perfectly. So you speak perfectly in English and I speak perfectly in Samoan. So don't be afraid to say it, because I'm a Bevalana. It's okay. It's not our language.
We've come up with the challenges that we discussed in our. So I'll be telling you what challenges we faced for this research thing, and she'll come up with the what were strategies. Okay, so the first challenge we came up with is the selecting a catchy topic for research. Like, we could have so many topics in mind, but to have it phrased to look like something catchy, that's one challenge for us. You know, we cannot put it in words that the editor or the journal can see it as sketchy. So that's it. That's the first challenge we faced. And the second one is us here at NUS, we do not have enough time to do research. You know, we cannot balance the working load of teaching and giving us this time to do research. So to us, to our group, we see it as a challenge. Thirdly, we do not have enough resources. One resource, and I'm happy that the director of the resource center is here, is not being able to have access to journals, online journals. We have limited sites as well to hop on. Like many a times we try to log on sites to have YouTube videos for lessons, and these sites cannot be, you know, like, you know what the message is. And then, what's the last one? The research software, as in the use of SPSS, and what else? We don't know, because I remember the last time I tried to use the SPSS was the dummy version, and it wasn't the same as in the actual version of SPSS. And when I sent my work to my supervisor, hello, can you do the Crusco-Wallace test again, Manuel, because your test is wrong from, so it's a challenge to us. Thank you very much, and she'll be presenting our strategies.
Okay, these are some of the strategies based on our challenges. Number one, asking and seeking help from experienced researchers, also professors and associate professors who have experience and the expertise with the researchers, and also networking with other colleagues who have done researches. And for the time, reduce teaching hours to allow more time for research. And also we find it hard to balance time with teaching, research, and family time. So proper time management during the week. I call the weekend for our families. Leave the weekend for family. And seek funding to access journals online and software. Like my colleague mentioned about the SPSS, we need to have sufficient resources like SPSS and software, and also encourage collaborations with other universities for resources and for funding. Yeah, that's about it from us.
Wow. So those licenses are scattered around the place. And so if you need a copy of SPSS for your statistics, just ask the research office, the research manager. She's got a copy. Okay?
Thank you.
Subscription is paid for by the NUS Finance for about 80,000 per annum biannually, and it's on our NUS website under our library webpage. And you know, over the last 3 years, the statistical analysis, user stats says that, you know, there's been low usage, especially during the holiday months of the year. So that's our confusion there. We have that resource there, the EBSCO, which is costly, and yet academic staff and researchers are just not using it, except for my friend Ramona and Sawitala or Vaina. I don't limited couple research access. That EBSCO has thousands of e-books and journals.
Yeah, thousands of journals on this. And it's on the website, did you say?
Yeah, it's on our NUS website, under the library webpage.
But we haven't had a very good experience with this, though, I'm sorry to say.
It's the language, which is English language. We discussed that because, first of all, you have to be good in English. As a Samoan, English is our second language. And then secondly, that also relates to our academic language. First you have to know the English language, and then from there you also have to know the academic writing and also how you navigate through it. So we conclude that is one of the challenges for emerging researchers, is getting used to the academic language and the writing. The second one is fear of paper being rejected. I believe that it's personal. And the third one is no experience, fear of having done any research, and so fear of no experience. The other one is lengthy process. Not only from the beginning all the way to publishing a paper, it takes months and sometimes it takes years to publish just one research. A good one. Number 5 is access to data. I think we kind of discussed it with the other groups, but I mean we all discussed it just now. And the other one is ethics approval. And the last one is time. So the other group mentioned that to balance off your teaching time as well as your research time is just a struggle for most staff. Some of the strategies that we came up with is one is experienced mentors. We're still in need of senior staff that could help mentors emerging researchers. Second one is team research. That also could counter the fear of the paper being rejected, but also the low experience and time. We're as a team. And then workshop, we request, once again, customized workshops like this one. And that also relates to the ethics approval fear. If there could be a customized workshop that could cater for what is the process of ethics approval from filling up the forms all the way to what are some of the criteria that they base their approvals on, so that all the staff would be aware of that. The other one is read more. That's another strategy, is to counter the English language and the academic language struggle. We could, I think, force staff to read more academic papers relevant to what you want to do. And then fundings, I think we discussed also subscriptions to online journals. And the last one is easy workload on staff members. Thank you very much. That's from us today.
Work, earning money for your families, put food on the table, spending time with your children and your wife and everyone, and church and our culture as well, makes that very, very difficult, very difficult to manage all time sometimes. It's all this balance. Also, one member mentioned this last literature on Pacific, and there are not that many papers published on specific topics specific to the Pacific, so it's quite hard to find papers on that. And one of the things mentioned here as well is writing style. If you decide to write one article this year for this journal and then write another next year and the year after, it's going to be very difficult to change your style of writing over and over because you're used to the one before and you're used to the other one, the other style, using the other style. Some of the other challenges, processing charge, high article processing charge, and finding funding, choosing the most appropriate methods for your research is another one mentioned by our friends there. And and the cruel comments from reviewers, and which is like she said, is a personal one, and we have to be really, really tough to deal with. Yes. And limited access to some sources, and our strategy for that is to go to the library and make use of our resources at the library and everything else that has been paid for.
A lot of times, for me, why it takes a while to do something as well is the perfectionism culture that we live in. That the one time you do something, it has to be perfect. And because of how we grow up in our families too, there's really no room to stumble. Yeah, and I feel like that was one of the things that even I faced that challenge myself. So that's what holds us back. There's always that mind that has to be done well. If you can't do it well, don't do it at all. And therefore some people, and I find that in our students as well. That's why a lot of our students don't do well in classes. It's really the confidence that holds them back. And I relate to that a lot. Exposure, if I had not done a thesis and had not done research, I didn't know how it felt and to do. So therefore sitting here, it makes sense now. Sitting here when I didn't do all of this, it didn't make sense. It was jargon, I zoned out. And I see that in a lot of our junior staff, they zone out. And half the time I remember, because I've been here 10 years, half the time sitting here when I was younger, I was like, oh, I don't think this is relevant for me because my JD tells me it's not relevant for me because I'm not told to publish. So also that's the other point that we made about what's communicated from the top all the way to the bottom because it affects everybody and how we build ourselves up. Lack of training. I've also sat through workshops where they just tell you, this is how you do research, and then everybody just goes, nothing done for a whole year. Let's do the training again. Let's happen over and over. And again, because I also believe we're not given the right tools at the right time, or it's also, there's a lot of factors around that. And mentorship. So Martin shared how he was able to publish because he had a good mentor who held his hand, and also, well, not really hold his hand, but like, you know, did it together, but showed the ropes, and therefore learning. So that's about it.
Okay, so I'll be presenting on the overcoming the challenge. Okay, so I think one of the solutions that we've come up with to try and tackle the fears and challenges is to hold regular workshops, which Emily and as the research manager and Phoebe have done. I've made it a goal to attend all the workshops just so that I can have a fair understanding of what to expect in research and to improve myself. Yeah. So the second solution is to create an enabling environment. I feel that we should normalize failing within our faculty. I know that it's the stigma that is attached to failing. Oh, you failed, so you're gonna stay in the corner and do whatever. I feel that we should overcome this because most of the time, because we don't, the reason why we don't publish is the fear of failing, fear of being rejected, and I feel that we should enable an environment that we can succeed together and fail together. Yeah. We should also encourage peer-to-peer mentoring. I have personal experience with this and the benefits of mentorship. Siu took me under her wing as her mentor, and that's something I'm really grateful for because I learned a lot from her. And I think last year, I cried twice, just because of my time management with my heavy workload with class, and then me being dramatic about I don't have enough time, balance. So I gave up. I told Siu I have to back out from the research. And then Siu said, no, you're not doing this. We've come so far. It's only, you can see the finish line. And then eventually, after a lot of our research being sent back to us from the editor, we finally perfected it and it was accepted. And I think at that point I was overjoyed because I accomplished something. Yeah. Another thing was writing workshops. Writing workshops just so we can focus on the task at hand. Focus on, I think it was Professor Sina's point was to shut up and write. If we focus on something, we can achieve something. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you.
And these workshops are like writing retreats where you can go away for a while.
Students, so we started here on a Friday afternoon and went all day Saturday till about 6, and most of us completed quite a bit of work. So you had this space for writing and the room next door for coffee break. And the rule was that if you were in the coffee room for 10 minutes, you could talk. But once you came here, you had to shut up and do your writing. And it was a bit of a test because a lot of people wanted to whisper and exchange notes like, school kids. But in the end, if you really wanted to do it and use the time, I completed a task. I had been, a report I had to do of a review of a course for the ODL thing. And I was so glad I could finish it and have it all done because it just took that Friday and Saturday to get down to the nitty-gritty and put it all into place. And that's the purpose of the Shut Up and Write workshop.
And even if we are not, if we have our working papers, or if we've published and if we have our full text version of our papers or articles, how do we go about promoting our research and how do we publicize our research? So one of the aspects that I share with you is on social networking sites. Don't always use social networking sites just to have a chat with your friends, but these sites could be explored and could be utilized to share your research. One of the common platforms is Twitter. So just like the bad tweets, it's recurrently used by academics. You can share your research and you will get the number of tweets and retweets, and whoever has shared or your work can be seen on Twitter. The second platform is Facebook, and I know most of us are just using Facebook for our personal connection, to have this connection with our family and friends. But it's also a wonderful platform where you can post up your journal articles, put up your blogs, videos, and your artwork, etc., which you can share with your colleagues. And of course, whatever content you share, that's readily available. You can see whom it is shared with, who is liking your work, who is making a grumpy face on your research, what good comments you are receiving about your research, and so forth. Another platform is LinkedIn. Yes, LinkedIn is used by many. It's an academic platform, a professional platform to exchange information, and you can reach people out there in the industry. So it's a great tool to connect with your allies in the industry. And if you are a person that really wants to bridge the gap between policy and practice through your research, this is a great platform to connect to those people out there in the industry. And you can post your materials or your research on LinkedIn. And again, LinkedIn as well, it displays the shares and the counts for your research work. The other one is the scholarly networks that is available, that we all as researchers can tap into. So one of the commonly used ones is Microsoft Academic Research, or the Microsoft research engine, where you can search a number of scholarly articles and research pertaining to the different disciplines that you come from. So if you Google Microsoft Academic Research, the screen that appears there will pop up, and you can actually search research material pertaining to the discipline that you come from. And you can get research work which you can cite in your work, and at the same time it gives you a graphic representation on what work you have uploaded, the citation, people that are viewing your work or sharing your work. So a great way to publicize your work and connect with other researchers out there. We also have scholarly sites such as the ResearchGate. I myself use ResearchGate, and we also have academia.edu. Now ResearchGate is a platform, again, a very good platform where you can upload your full text articles as well as your abstracts, and then people can share your work and you can share your work with other colleagues around the world. ResearchGate normally gives you a matrix, and you can actually see that on a weekly basis, who are all the people that have viewed your research work? What is the number of reads that you have for your particular research article? What is the number of citations that you have? Who are the people that are asking questions about your research? So you can have a good exchange in terms of research questions or deliberations pertaining to your work as well as to others' work. And you also see who is citing your work. And the same thing you can do for other people that you are following on ResearchGate. Wonderful way to download papers as well. And heaps of articles that you don't find elsewhere, it's found on ResearchGate. Yes, there are some articles that says that the full text is not available, but you can request the full text from the author, from the particular author of the work that you are trying to retrieve. And so it is an available platform that researchers can utilize as part of their research work. Academia.edu is another one. Again, academia is a great way to keep track of the developments in your field, and different disciplines and material pertaining to the different research areas is also available on academia.edu. And again, you can see who's following you and whom you are following. Google Scholar, a commonly used platform by many academics globally, freely accessible. You can create your Google Scholar account as well. And Google Scholar as well permits you to search materials across different discipline areas. So if you have a problem and you are saying you can't find articles, these are the various platforms where you can search for articles. And you can also upload your work to promote your research. And of course we have Medley, which is the referencing software. Medley is used by various people to put their research online, but it's also a very effective referencing tool. So most of us that are saying we have problems in switching between the different referencing style, when we are submitting our papers to one journal, if it's rejected, then tailor making it to another journal, it's a huge challenge. If we're doing it manually, it's a huge challenge. But if we are using Medley to do that, it's not a huge challenge, because everything is stored within the Medley library and you can easily switch the referencing style from Chicago to Harvard to AP, etc. Now, there are a lot of things about that I heard comments on that we can't find articles. Accessibility is an issue. So I bring to you the next part of this workshop, which touches upon open access publishing. What is the idea or logic of open access publishing? It's free, it's accessible, there's greater visibility, greater outreach, it's convenient for the user, you can download articles, you can read them freely, and you can also publish in a domain where your work is freely accessible to other readers within the discipline. So what is open access publishing? And I loved it when the librarian has shared with us the directory of open access journals and the idea of directory of open access books, the recent one which I put up here on the slide, which all of us at NUS have been enlightened on. Directory of open access journals as well as open access books provides the platform where articles, books, etc. are readily and freely available to researchers to utilize. And these are the various platforms that could be utilized in your research journey if you are finding it hard to locate articles or resources. Of course, I've put down there the NUS Press. A lovely idea being proposed, and the purpose of having the NUS Press or our own, very own university press is to promote the idea of open access so that all of us can share our research. The more our work is published in the open access domain, the more citations there would be, the greater the visibility, the greater the research presence of the researcher, which is a plus point for researchers that use the open access platform to publish their work. So what are the different types of open access that we have? We have the green and the gold open access publishing. The gold open access publishing refers to work that is immediately available free of charge at the site of the publication to any member of the public. But what are authors expected to do? Authors do not subscribe, but rather authors pay the article processing or publication cost. And this is seen by the publisher as a means of recoupling the cost. Authors that publish in open access domain, their work is readily and freely available, it's accessible, and this is usually on the publisher's website. So you must be asking, right, what are some examples? We are all from different disciplines. So those that are in the marketing and management discipline, one of the examples of gold open access publishing is the Industrial Marketing Management Journal. According to the user rights and the publication fee, as the author, if you publish in this high quality journal, you need to pay USD 2,500 excluding tax to make your work available and also to be able to access the articles online. This is the author's fee that you end up paying for open access. Those from the tourism discipline, we have tourism management perspective. Again, you need to pay USD 2570 as an author excluding taxes to be able to access all articles online. But in terms of the benefits that you have, the user rights is clearly stipulated, where you have greater accessibility to all the issues for as long as you want. In the area of medicine, we do have people from medicine here. So this journal is from the medicine area. It's fully open access journal, right? One of the top journals that there is. It has a peer review process, and there's different types of licenses that you need to pay for as an author if you're wanting to publish in this particular journal. We have psychological medicine as well, one of the top rated journals with a high impact factor, right? It produces 16 issues a year. This journal as well is under Gold Open Access Publishing, and it's available through Cambridge as well. The ISN numbers are all given there, and of course those that are in the fields of psychiatry, etc. can use this platform to publish their work. If you're here from Forte, we do have journals in that area as well. Advances in Mechanical Engineering, right? The publisher is Sage Open Access, and yes, Sage, if you Google Sage Open Access, on their main website, which is Sage Open Access, you have subject areas and disciplines. And Sage Open Access has heaps of areas or disciplines where you can select journals from. If you have a problem in identifying where do I look for journals from, this is the place where you look, Sage Open Access, and you can search journals according to your discipline areas. If you're in the arts discipline, we have European Journal of Women's Studies, we have Psychology Women Quarterly, right? These are all the journals, just two that I've picked out of the heaps that is there on the website, which is again under Gold Open Access Publishing and published by Sage as the publisher. In the development studies, we have the Journal of Environment and Development, which is again Gold Open Access. In education, we have the International Journal of Education Research, which again is a platform for Gold Open Access. What is Green Open Access? Green Open Access means that your work is available either in the pre-print period or the post-print period, but there is an embargo that is associated with it. And after that embargo period is open, yes, the publisher gives you the exclusive right to put it up in your institutional repositories or subject discipline repositories that you may have. So again, a very good way of utilizing this as an open access mechanism. So you would be questioning Green Open Access. What are some common examples? Springer is a common publisher. Springer has heaps of journals under its wing. Some of the common journals, and I've just picked 4 from here: the Review of Managerial Science, the Journal of Management Control, the Journal of Business Economics, and Healthcare Management Science are all published by Springer, and they are all under Green Open Access Publishing. So You're not paying a fee, unlike the gold access, but yes, you can access materials from these journals as well. The next part of the workshop, like I heard some people say, reviewers are too critical, too harsh, or too hard on the researchers. And therefore, you have a tough time battling how you are going to respond to the reviewer. Now, some of us have a very good journey. We send our work if it meets the guidelines or if it's in alignment to what the manuscript or the journal requirements are, we get a direct acceptance on our paper. And it says accepted as is, which is great news. Or just minor revision and then accepted, which will be just perused by the reviewer or doesn't even require that. The editor will just check and approve. So we have a very smiley face. So the experience that we have, which is to continue publishing because we've cracked it. We know now how to do publishing. But for some of us, it's a direct rejection. So we may send 10 papers in a year and all is rejected, right? And that's the kind of waste we end up having. What are we going to do about it? Yes, what you need to do is look for alternative journals. You can't be stuck there all your life crying over spilled milk that you have not been able to publish. You need to explore, change your path, change your course, change your action plan. Because if you stick to that, you will be with that expression for the whole of your life with a big question mark on your face. You don't want to have that. As an academic, you do want to move ahead. Therefore, one of the key aspects is looking for alternative journal. Start off with simple peer-reviewed journal. Nobody is putting a knife on your throat to say, aim for the highest, the top 10%, where 90% is the rejection rate. Nobody is telling you to do that. Start off with simple peer-reviewed articles, peer-reviewed journals. Work with people that have a track record of publishing. Take them as your mentor. And one thing we always have to remember is that we also as academics need to have a good heart at helping people. Some of us are tough coconuts to crack, I must say. Never willing to help or share the expertise that we have. We should not be as such. We must be very fluid. We must be helpful to each other, irrespective of the disciplines that we come from. I'm sure each and every one of us has something to teach another. So be gentle. You never know that small help that you give to another person, how it will bounce back, okay? And the numerous benefits that will accumulate. Because we may end up having a group of people that are really encouraging each other in this research journey. And we are all able to uplift each other through our good spirits and assistance and bring the research output of the university at another level altogether. So it's very important for us to come out of that hard characters that we hold and then that we carry, trying to show that we know so much and we really don't want to be helpful. We need to come out of that. We need to be more helpful to each other. Take our staff as our, as our proteges and mentor them. If we can quote somebody without having your name on that paper, don't bother, you don't need that. You're already at a level where you've published so much. Why do you need that person's paper to put your name on that paper? Forget about your name being on that paper. Be more helpful, guide them. The third one, sometimes we receive comments where there is a minor change to the paper. So all we need to do is, we need to study the reviewer's comments. We need to thank them. We cannot rant about it. We need to be thankful. We need to be very polite. We don't want to cross the line here. And we must be able to say, okay, 5 comments, and this is how we've addressed the 5 comments. Another situation can be a very daunting situation where it's a major resubmission and a major change that has to be made. And what many of us do is we cry and we give up. 3 months, 6 months wasted, and now a resubmission comes in. And we think, how am I ever gonna come through this? The key point is, again, it's very silly to leave something that you've worked so hard on, where it's gone through the editor, passed through the review process, now you have to make the changes and you give up. You waste your 6 months and you go look for another journal. You don't want to do that. It's good to put it aside for some time. Take help from experienced people. If you can't, reflect on it. Sometimes editors and reviewers are also helpful. If you cannot understand what they are saying about a particular point and you clarify, they do come back and tell you in terms of guiding you to some of the things that you could consider possibly in your manuscript. And that could also be another avenue to explore. So always accept the feedback, be very thankful, revise, and please don't think that the timeline is your own timeline to make the changes and resubmit. When they give you the feedback, there's a turnaround time that they're expecting you to make the changes and submit. If it's within the next 2 weeks, and if you sit on it for a month, and then you send it back, nobody wants to read your work. Because the turnaround time was very clear. If the issue has to come out that particular month. So be very respectful to the reviewers as well when they give you a turnaround time to make the changes. What is important for us when we are responding to the comments? Don't be too defensive. Unless 100% you know, you can say something worthy that will make a difference to the editor. Otherwise, be very polite. Make sure you are assertive and persuasive, but not defensive. And never be afraid to ask the editor or the reviewer for assistance. This slide is something which I've just summarized. You may also have your own experiences, what you have gone through in terms of what are the do's and don'ts of publishing. But based on what this workshop is about, just summarized it on this slide. And now we come to the last part of this workshop. So much said and done. Some of us are out there in the industry. And policies are being developed. How is our research boosting the policy making, development and implementation process? We have practitioners out there in the industry. How are you through research bridging the gap between policy and practice? This policy practice perspective together with the research thrust that we have seems to be different parts of the puzzle which are yet not connected. How do we as researchers ensure that we are able to weave policy and practice and make an effective contribution through research? And I give you the next 10 minutes to discuss this. How do you as researchers intend to bridge the gap between policy and practice? Yes. Okay, what we will do is we will move on to and have a professor present his part, and then in the last part we will work on this question.
Thank you very much. So some of my slides will actually be crossing with the slides. Let me just... but there's nothing wrong with that. I can just re-emphasize again some of the points that she raised. Okay, so most of the people I come across, most academics will want to publish, but they don't know how. They need some help. And we've mentioned the word mentoring in this forum, and you're absolutely right. You need to be mentored into a position where you can actually write your own papers and publish your own papers. And that's where collaboration comes in. You collaborate with your other colleagues in your faculty and also across faculties and also across to other countries. You find that they assist you not only with doing research but also with writing. So I just want to recap on some of the things mentioned. So some of the basics really. What is your message or story? What is the message you want to tell? Is it important? And if it's important, then of course it needs to be told. And the question is to who? Who's your audience? So there will be a demographics, of course, for your message. Okay, those you need to tell to. And also there will be a demographic, so the journals will actually determine who's going to read your publications, your paper. And your paper, of course, needs to be clear. We mentioned about abstracts and methods and what have you. So the methods have to be explainable or defended. The results have to be correct and reproducible. And the discussion needs to reflect the results of your findings and also what has been published in the literature. It needs to be evidence-based, of course, that you've done the research. The research is based on methods that have been proven, and you've done it properly. You followed all the guidelines as how to do it, and that you've reviewed the literature to make sure that on balance your story actually aligns or identifies, or as Dr. Nas said, you've identified a gap in the literature and you've actually contributed to explaining and addressing that gap. And also one of the things that, what will your peers think about your paper? So this is where the peer review comes in. And I just want to show you a review form that we use for the Pacific Journal of Reproductive Health. So these are the questions that are given to the reviewers when they are looking at your paper. So they're asked whether there's an importance in the research question. So they look at your paper and say, well, yes, this paper is very important or not important. So they'll mark it down. 1 is not important, 5 is most important. So that's how they actually go through. Is the work original? So if it's not original, of course, there's a high chance it won't be published. If it's not important and not original. And remember, a study that's been done in Fiji, for example, on a particular point that you're actually looking at here, it is still original for Samoa, because it hasn't been done here. Okay, it may have been original in, not original in the sense that it's been done elsewhere, but in our context, in our population, okay, and what we're trying to solve here, it is original. Relevance, is it relevant to the journal? Is it useful for medical, so, because this is a medical journal, so is it useful for medical practice, teaching, and science? So it's that impact of research that we're looking at. Okay, is your research piece going to impact policy and practice? So again, that's, and then strengths and weaknesses. Has the author explained the strengths and weaknesses of their research? Because that needs to come in a discussion. So, and validity of results, are the results valid? Is the interpretation of the results adequate? Is the paper clear? So is it suitable for publication? So normally this is sent to about 3 reviewers. And it's a blind review, so they don't know who you are, they don't know who the authors are, okay, and you don't know who the reviewers are. Sometimes we ask the authors to actually submit names of people that they feel can review your paper. So sometimes it may not be quite double-blind review, but most of the time the journal will actually find their own reviewers. And how we find our reviewers? We actually go online, we Google, we put in the title of your paper on Google, and then see whether someone has actually done research that is similar to yours. And so those are the people that we target to review your paper. Okay? And we find that we have to email 10 people to review your paper to actually get only 2 people to do it. Because it's very hard, people are busy, academics are busy, and so when you have another, the 10th paper to review in a month, you start saying no. So, so we need to ask more people and actually to get 2 people to review your paper. So that is the that's the tool that is used to review your paper by the reviewers. Okay, so which journal? So we've all heard that you need to pick your journal. So when you completed your research project, you're now going to write the paper, but you're now going to think first of which journal you're going to publish it in, because that determines how you write the paper. Okay, because the requirements by the Journal of Samoan Studies is quite different from, let's say, a regional journal. Okay, so you need to actually find which journal you're going to publish it in, because each journal has got their own rules. You need to decide early, and the usual advice is that you need to aim high. You aim for the high impact journals first, and that's because there's a prestige in publishing in high impact journals. However, to tell you a fact, it doesn't really matter. If your paper is suitable for our, if your paper was actually a paper that was research done in Samoa, okay, then who's going to be interested in reading your research? Samoans in Samoa, okay, Samoans overseas, perhaps, okay. Will Fijians want to read your paper? Probably unlikely. Will the Americans want to read your paper? Probably very unlikely. So you need to pitch your paper to the audience that you're aiming to target. And so that's where the journal is important. So regional journals are not bad, or national journals are not bad at all. You mentioned about time commitment, and I agree with you totally. That when you have a heavy teaching workload, it's very hard to write a paper or publish. So the trick really is to discuss with your head of department the fact that you want to do some research, you need to have more time, and so therefore they need to identify some time for you to do your research. You basically need, you can't sort of say, they can't sort of say to you, well, use 1 to 3 p.m. on Thursday to write your paper, and then I'll give you 1 to 3 p.m. on Monday. It's not going to work. Okay, we've all heard, shut up and write. It was at the workshop. So basically, you need a chunk of time. Okay, you need a whole weekend, or you need Monday to Friday, basically, to write undisturbed. Okay, you need to turn off your cell phone, basically, and not to answer your emails. So you really need to focus on writing that paper. And of course, training is important. Collaboration, I mentioned, is a key to actually learning skills from others. So we find that we don't possess all the right skills. I'm not good at stats, for example, okay, and I'm getting better at writing papers. So we all share. So if you have 5 people in your research team, one person might be fantastic at research, at statistics, and they are the ones that will do the stats. The other person might be fantastic in writing. And so that's the person then that will do most of the writing. And then when they pass the paper around for everyone to read, you actually learn from that. You learn how they actually phrased the sentences, for example, how they put together the abstract and methodology. So mentoring is very important. Telling our stories. So I'm an editor of the Pacific Half Dialogue, and I'm just trying to see whether I can open this. How do I open this thing here? Click on it. Well, no, it's not going to click on it there. Okay. No, it's not going to work. Copy and paste into browser. I see. Yeah. Okay. So I'm an editor of this particular journal, and there's information for authors. So submission, preparation checklist. So this is something Dr. Nass has talked about. You really need to address those things there as you're submitting your paper. You really need to pay particular attention to all the details there. For example, referencing. So there's a referencing style that you need to stick to. Author guidelines. The lengths of the articles are all there. So there's differences in articles. There's a Talano paper, for example, which might be different from original research, might be different to a perspective or an editorial. Okay, so they're all different styles of writing. So just follow the journal's recommendation in terms of what. Where's the? How do we go about it now? Okay. So what do we go? Sorry, just. Okay. Takes time to load.
It's 10 to 4.
Yeah, maybe that's fine. Okay. So this is a journal that I started about 5 years ago for the Pacific Journal of Reproductive Health, and it's for Pacific nurses and doctors, midwives to write their stories. So that journal is still going strong. And then I was asked to actually edit this particular journal. And so this is a journal for the Pacific. It's called Pacific Research Journal. Now, the thing is that, and some of our people have actually, from Samoa, have actually published in there and have submitted in there. And I'd just like to mention that Dr. Publicize Our Research, who has just been promoted to professor at the University of Otago 2 months ago, 80% of her papers were published in this journal. So that goes to show that you don't have to go for the Lancet and the highfalutin journals overseas. You just go for a local journal or a regional journal, you publish your articles in there, it's good enough to actually get you a promotion. Okay? You don't have to target the other journals. You go for a regional journal, and so as I was saying, Taiso Puanga actually played very safe by doing that. So my friend Filoia actually sent me her master's thesis. I think it's very important that we actually translate our master's thesis into papers. Okay, there's too many master's theses that are sort of decorating shelves. They need to publish. And so if I click that, we'll go to her article. But this is the Journal of Samoan Studies. Now, why is it not connected to the internet now? Okay. You've all seen the Journal of Samoan Studies website. It's got their own information for authors, what they require, how they expect you to write papers for them. And I think most of you have published in there. Okay? And as Dr. Nass said, look at an article from that journal. And that will tell you. So that's an article there by Sue Jang. And why I picked that particular paper was because it's kind of similar research really to what Filoy had done. Was this from a master's paper, was it?
No, this was from an initiative with Pizza.
Sorry?
It's from an initiative.
Oh, I see, okay, fine. So, see, it's very straightforward. So when you want to publish in the Journal of Samoan Studies, just look at the articles that were published there, how they were actually written, and the phrasing, for example, okay, the headings, and that will guide you in your writing. Okay? That will guide you in your writing. So let's look at how the methods were written and all that. I'm very, very impressed with Hugh's use of the R statistics software. Now, we were talking about our lack of SPPS, and yet we've got someone who has actually done R. Did you do the R?
R is free. Yeah.
Yes, R is free, but did you do it? I see, okay. Well, we've got an expert in R. I can't get my head around R. So if you don't have SPSS and you want someone to do your stats using R, there you go. Okay, you can ask her to help you there. So that's fantastic. So always refer to the articles from that particular journal that you want to look into. And of course, time, mention undisturbed deadlines. You need to have a laptop, and of course you need to have a Wi-Fi. So Dr. Nass has actually mentioned all these, so I'm not going to go into those again. Other team members will help you edit, and also you need to give deadlines. Okay, you need to say, okay, so-and-so will do this work, deadline, please submit your edits by then. And always check your grammar, spelling, and references. And I tend to use Grammarly to check my spelling and grammar. And that is free as well. And Dr. Nass has mentioned the University Press, National University Press. So that's going to publish our books. So the recommendation is actually, the proposal is through VCC already. So it's going to come to Senate and to the Council. It's most likely it's going to go through. That we're going to have a university press. Just like most of you have done postgrads in Victoria. So you would have found that that this is the Victoria's University Press. See our Prime Minister's biography there. It carries a lot of prestige. So staff members can write books, publish in university press, and we can sell them online as well. It makes money for the university, creates prestige for a university, and makes you some commission as well. Okay, you get some money as well. But that's not the main purpose for having the university press, is to encourage publication. And I must say that it's not a new thing. When I mentioned NUS Press, Centre of Samoan Studies sent me loads of books. They said they've already published. And it's got Centre of Samoan Studies on it, National University of Samoa. So they didn't call it NUS Press, they just said Centre of Samoan Studies. And they publish all those books there. So it is possible for all of us to actually publish a book and have the NUS Press as a publishing agent. Okay, so we will be publishers. Okay, to publish some of the books, some of the monographs that you're going to produce. In fact, some of those books that you give to students free of charge, well, those can be published by NUS Press. And then we can sell them to the students, for example. Okay, so it's interesting developments in this area. And I wish you all success in your publishing journey, and looking forward to all the research papers that will be coming out of this group. Thank you very much.
Primary, secondary year. There is a resistance to this official language. And I find it very unhelpful if we say, this is not our language. Because if you talk to younger Samoans, they say, oh no, this is, we are bilingual. This is our language, the Samoan and the English. And they own it, and they want to. So for older people, in a sense, I don't know if it's nationalistic word, but in our sort of experience as English teachers, that's an attitude that could be seen almost as a barrier. So I think we should embrace the bilingualism and be proud of it, and be grateful that you can. And if you're having trouble with English, or if you feel somehow, because we have people from Fobi give us the articles to get it. And this particular friend of ours, he would write to me, and Amjana and I would do it with a big paragraph. Sina will contribute here, and we would say, no, we're supposed just to edit, we're supposed to fill up all the data. Like he actually thought we were going to write it. But, because he said, well, this is not my language. Yeah, but it's your article. It's your research. My human rights. So basically, it's a matter of, encouraging ourselves. And I think we need to be talking positively about this experience of the bilingual world we live in. And it also affects our teaching. If you pass by a lot of classes the language of instruction is Samoan. And when we have to sign for scholarship that these subjects are taught in English as the main language of instruction, you know, that's sort of a bit of a lie, a white lie that we're telling. But I can understand why. We say we're helping the students, but the research shows that secondary teachers were more comfortable in language 1 to language 2. So they were not prepared to stretch their mind and brain and words to get the second language going. And see, with use, there is improvement. And with non-use, there is actually decline. So if you don't use it, you will lose it. And also with this publish and perish, I think we'd like to move that to a positive perspective and say, publish and prosper in partnership. We've done that. We've done that in our faculty. Because, you know, don't worry about the negative. You get too hung up on, oh, then I won't do it, it's not perfect, I can't, it's not good enough, I'm not good enough, So in the end, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. But in the end, you don't move forward to the woo-hoo, you know, to get the, you know, the money. And so we should end the promotion. So basically, we've said, I wanted always to say publish and prosper, and then being added in partnership, so in collaboration with each other. I think that there's those three, you know, sort of P's there that would help us progress. Thank you.